Welcome everyone to Chart's free webinar series. Today we have Nick Kyle from Bagel Brands presenting on identifying gaps in training programs with the help of Kat Claypool of Wisetail. Welcome Nick and Kat.
Thank you, Tara.
Hello everyone, welcome. As Tara said, we're here today to discuss gaps in training programs and how identifying those gaps can improve your ROI with the chance to initiate new programs. I'm Kat, I'm the head of sales at Wisetail. I will be at the conference in Austin in a couple of weeks, pending the airlines get me there. So please come say hi during the resource gallery. With that, I am here today with Nick Kyle, Director of Training at Bagel Brands. So Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tara and Kat. I appreciate you letting me share some of the successes we've had at Bagel Brands with our training and development program. And I appreciate you inviting us to your free webinar series. I'm excited to share some of the information that we've had over the successes over the last several years. And hopefully some of this can translate even beyond the restaurant industry. Knowing that a lot of the L&D teams out there are running on a lean team. So hopefully this can help you engage with your end user more efficiently and help identify some improvements you could do within your own program. So my name is Nick Kyle. I'm actually the manager. I hopefully maybe soon be director. We'll see about that. But I'm manager of training at Bagel Brands. Bagel Brands, what is Bagel Brands? Yeah, Bagel Brands is a collection of 4 separate bagel concepts across the country. We are located or based out of Lakewood, Colorado. We're a parent company of 4 separate brands. 2 are our biggest national brands are Einstein Brothers Bagels and Bruegger's. And then we also have 2 regional brands, Noah's on the West Coast and Manhattan's on the East Coast. We have a combination of about 988 bakeries in 44 states. It's a combination of corporate, franchise, and license locations. And in the coming weeks, we have 4 locations opening internationally in Japan. We're really excited about that. But we have roughly 7,500 corporate employees. And the data that I'm going to be sharing today is really based around our corporate employees, as we don't really track or do reporting configurations on our license and franchise. We mainly just support them, but kind of a breakdown of our organization, how we're structured. So 4 different ways of baking bagels, presenting them, making sandwiches, et cetera, et cetera. So we are a mighty team of 2. It's myself and my co-partner, Danny Doris. She's an instructional design specialist, but we oversee the LMS as well as all training content, role, and product. So today we kind of built out a baseline agenda. For today's call, we're going to go over identifying gaps in the onboarding and product training, re-strategizing your training modules, recognizing how to talk to your staff, especially knowing with the new generational breakdown and how the younger team members like to be communicated with, and then seeing ROI in learning and development programs, kind of a people-centric process. So I'm going to first start off introducing the partnership with Wisetail. Wisetail is our LMS company that we utilize for our LMS. Bagel Brands LMS is called Coffee and Bagel U. We have been a Wisetail client for about 8 years, and it's a truly integral part of our team members' days. The managers typically, we have a 100% login at least once a week. Typically, the average login times for our GMs is 4 to 5 times a week. Anything and everything that hits the field goes through our LMS platform. It's the one-stop digital ecosystem. We have 8,700 users. That includes the franchising license concepts, all brands except for NBC, which in the upcoming weeks, they will be on there as well. We have 300 to 500 daily logins, users that are logging into the site every day. It's also our communications hub. Our department tools and resources are all located in here. Training, both role and product training, quickly accesses to all the departments. We have them all laid out, easily consumable or easily accessible for all of our team members. And we also share headlines and highlights, anything that's going within the organization, call outs and community highlights for our guests, some of the national news headlines that we're in, it's kind of etc. So we've been on YSTEL for a really long time, and we really appreciate the partnership. So the first challenge I'm going to jump into is our role-based training or position-based training. So the first idea, the first gap that we're going to run into is kind of identifying some of the tailored down procedures or concepts. So in 2018, we started a huge project of converting or simplifying and modernizing our position training. We came into 2018 with this essential concept, is that we had 100+ pages of content. In order to do all the courses, it at least took 78 hours. It was primarily paper-based. It was 60% paper, more like, and my percentages are completely off on there. I was actually more like 80% paper, 10% digital, and 10% in person. We determined that a person is certified, or a team member certified, off of doing new hire orientation +1. This is when our organization was very single position focused. So we hired and trained our team members to be order takers, to be cashiers, to be sandwich makers, not to be cross-functional. One of the biggest drawbacks about being 100% paper, mind you, this was 2018, so only 4 or 5 years ago, there was zero trackability. Everything was done via paper. We had one digital program, our baker training, which is as important as it gets, baking our gold standard bagels. But unfortunately for the other positions, there was no trackability. We estimated we had less than a 30% completion of new hire +1. So we did a complete revamp on our role base. We simplified some of the positions, and we launched in late 2018 a new Modernize platform, really identifying where our strongest players are in the bakery. And we had incredible engagement. Mind you, if you're Einstein's, you only saw the Einstein's. If you weren't a drive-through location, you wouldn't have the drive-through modules available. If you didn't have barista, so it was very finite and detailed to the bakery, which was really good. That way you could properly track and implement the materials and not be redundant or excess materials that are not needed. We converted that 80% paper, 10% in person to 60% digital /video and 40% in person. And that's important because it aligns with the blended learning theory of combining in-person and digital training. We had great success the first year. We got up to new hire orientation +1. We got up to 80%. Phenomenal successes out of launching this new platform. And then combining into that blended learning is that we want to make sure that we're combining a digital and learning experience. That didn't necessarily translate into our LTOs though, limited time offerings or product launches. So our first gap was translation of materials was not being properly or escalated down effectively for LTO and product training. We had a top-down approach. We've always had kind of a top-down approach, at least as the 6 years I've been in the organization. And a lot of industries are like that. It starts at the support center as being the one stop, one hub for everything, why we're doing this, why we're launching a certain product, why we're launching it on a certain date, the connection with the guest. And then we filter it down. We bring it down to the DOs and then the district managers and to the general managers, the shift leaders, and then eventually the team member. Success of a launch was 100% dependent on the engagement of each layer within that structure. End users or the team members engaging with guests knew the least. They were least engaged. It was a kind of a game, it's kind of a game of telephone. As you keep on communicating it, you lose details, et cetera, et cetera. And it created an inconsistent guest experience. So what we did is we kind of shifted the pyramid. We isolated or targeted our messaging directly to the GMs. We have a technology stack within the Wisetail platform that we can communicate directly with GMs via enrollments. Essentially enrolls them into a class. It notifies them that they've been enrolled in this, and then we can actually create a reporting functionality that we can track completions. We can tell that 70% of GMs had even opened the module, or 70% or 60% have completed it. So it really gave a finite or detailed component to tracking it, but also relaying the message directly to the people that are the most important. Arguably, it'd be the general managers in our bakeries. So it allowed the support center to be at the bottom, but also the information is coming from both ends. Support center to DO, DO to DM, but also the GM has got all the details needed. So what we did in partnership with this interaction, we improved or right-sized our content. We launched a transition of converting text-heavy deployment guides and several different links within a module. It would add clicks, remove the user intuitiveness behind it, and created e-learning contents. This was actually, I had this as marked as the 22521, but we actually launched the previous module with just Einstein's as a test to see how team members would like the new interactive learning. But we started creating shorter videos, more bite-sized video content, but more engaging material, and also sharing with them the reasons behind the why behind the what. We started sharing COGS, we started showing shipment information, why the flavor profile is connected with the certain season that we launched it, et cetera, et cetera. And we had one of the largest launches that we've ever had for an LTO. We've actually transitioned the sandwich. If you're near an Einstein bagel or even any of the bagel brands, try the brisket, Texas brisket egg sandwich. It's a phenomenal sandwich, but it really connected with the team member because they were able to really communicate or talk about the product more intimately with the guest. They can say, hey, yeah, this is smoked in Texas. This is actually comes from Texas. There's a connection that created a better overall satisfaction with the guest. And the biggest grand slam was that we had a 93% completion of all team members had completed the content between all three brands that launched the product. It was phenomenal. We had never seen beyond 70% completion. To have 93 was great. And we also did a questionnaire with team members. We had over 1,000 responses, actually 1,300, between all brands and concepts, asking them the feedback on how they like the format, how they like the interaction, the guidance, essentially the training. And it was resounding. I think we had a 1 to 5 scale, and we rated like 4.8, I believe, a really high engagement with the team member. So the team member wanted this type of content. So then this little thing happened, the pandemic. It kind of slowed down everything. The pandemic hit, but the LMS became our centralized hotspot. This is what created successes. This is what helped support the successes we had with improved LTO training, and created the LMS as a central hub for any and all communications and procedure updates within the organization. I attended a seminar at Chart in March about ways of engaging your LMS. And one of the things that I kind of came back from that was a lot of organizations cut their LMS due to budgetary restrictions during COVID. And I felt like I was kind of took back by that, because this was almost our essential employee, or our essential tool to be coming on the tail end of COVID in a better spot and connected with the guest. It also became a social learning. It became a direct line of communications with field leaders, DMs, team members, GMs, to the team member or to us, so we can answer questions immediately. But yeah, this is kind of an example of how we utilized the LMS, not necessarily as an LTO or role-based training, but actually as the one-stop shop for anything and everything in COVID, as far as protocols, shelf life updates, et cetera, et cetera. So also one thing with the Bagel Brands, we came out of this shifting our retail model. We shifted our model to a one shift model. It reduced hours to where our guests wanted us. We were an organization that tried so hard bringing guests in the afternoon after lunch. We expanded our lunch menu, but in reality, our guests wanted the best breakfast. Your two biggest controllable expenses are labor and COGS. So it allows us to provide a better experience on less, but also be honest with our day part. So it benefited our COGS and waste. There's really been a big beneficial mindset structure with our retail model. So how did this change training? This required upskilling and cross-training and was critical to support, upskilling and cross-training was critical to support a one-shift model. We had to get away from the new hire orientation +1 and actually expand that to create a more dynamic team member that can make sandwiches, makes beverages, and go bake bagels if needed when we're on a short amount of head count, as well as just overall guest satisfaction. So we launched a new business strategy in late 2019, early 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. And our top 3 business priorities were energize culture, simplifying and strengthen operations, and ignite growth. Ignite growth, there were 2 fundamental components in sub-laid out bullet points that training directly improved or supported. Improved the GM and team member engagement, and reduce turnover and drive ownership mentality. Implement district manager and shift leader development programs. And then from the simplify and strengthen operations, then one thing that we had highlighted, that we main driver focus is cross-train all team members to a minimum of 3 positions. So we revamped the new hire orientation in 2019, and we adjusted to new hire +3. We are currently sitting at a 52% completion rate. When you look at our base core modules, I just showed you all 8 or 7 of them, but our baseline modules are new hire +3, which is typically greeter, cashier, sandwich maker, and prep. Greeter, cashier, soft skills, interacting with guests, guest satisfaction. Sandwich maker is obvious, how to make the sandwiches, the basic fundamentals behind making each individual breakfast and lunch sandwiches, if there are lunch sandwiches. And then prep. Prep allows you to step off the line and prepare for the next day and support the bakery. We identified the next training gap, which actually pretty much aligned. Oh, by the way, our goal by the end of this year for new hire +3 is going to be 85%. So how do we get that? Our training gap that we identified is aligned with the first training gap. The translation of materials was not being escalated down effectively for role-based training. So I started to do some breakdown of our new hire orientation and our other courses, but primarily new hire orientation. We were in a time that we had to let go of team members because of COVID layoffs. So we had a really thin baseline high performing team member, but we started getting busier and we're going to start hiring people. So how do we effectively connect with the new hires and make them more connected with the organization? So I started with the new hire orientation. That is the core. If you start with the fundamentals or the foundations is what I say, that is where the rest will kind of come to. New hire orientation is connecting the team member with LMS. Mind you, I'll kind of share some details, but over half of our team members are Gen Zs. They're 19 to 21. Sometimes this is their very first job. So connecting them with an LMS, connecting them with the Coffee and Bagel U, why it's there, how you interact with it. Brand history, this is a big one. We're 4 large brands. We're actually a culmination of a ton of different brands that have been acquired and it has grown over the years, but brand history, connecting the Brugers has got a really great video series that tells about their quality of product, how they came to where they're at now. Culture, our brand, our history, our culture, policies and procedures, basic fundamentals, adverse health, hand washing criteria, retail food safety, the foundations of interacting within the restaurant, hot surfaces, knife safety, additional safe practices. And then what I felt is the most important, especially for new team members, is your learning journey. What's next? What's in it for you? How can you grow with this organization? This might be a summer job, or this could be something that you kick around for a while. We have a ton of team members that have been with us for 20, 25 years. Our support ops manager just got back from her sabbatical for, I think, is 15, 20 years within the organization. So we have a lot of tenured employees, but we also have a lot of new team members that we need to kind of get prepared and get ready to be the next 10, 15 years. So this is kind of allows them to learn at their own pace, but let them know that there's a lot of growth opportunity. Some details behind why you start with the foundationals, because there's some little bit of information, but one of the big things I came out of is 88% of employees claim to learn more by finding information on their own or engaging with the content by their own. And that really kind of drives me to like how maybe we change the messaging to have the team member engage. So there's a question and I'm about to hit it for you on the question. So I started doing research, how our current program, how long it took time for team members to complete training, what our turnover was based off, how was our OSAT compared to that. So I started the research. I did we're almost right at a year now. From January 1st, 2020 to July 27th, we had launched our RBT course. We pilot launched in April 2019, that new course from the paper to the digital. And we did a company-wide launch in August of 2019. This was all active team members hired after January 1st, 2020. I have an asterisk there because as many of you in the restaurant world, we had to let go or release a lot of team members during COVID. And that unfortunately we weren't able to properly capture that due to COVID releases. So this is only active team members within this time period that were currently employed. And this was a manager-owned, top-down approach. The manager-owned, or what the support center would relay the message to the DO. The DO would relay the message to the DM, et cetera, as you go down the cadence. So when I started bringing this, we had 62% of our team members had completed new hire orientation. At that time, we had 3,300 team members, active team members. So it was a super thin operation. And the average time to complete before was 22 and a half days. It was insane to me that the average time to complete, with less than 35% of the team members completing within 4 days. The big number there is that 62% of team members had completed a new hire orientation. I might say the fundamentals, the foundations, how to interact with food, how to make a sandwich, how to deal with or interact with the guests. So my first question that I came up with was, how many team members have left within 22 days of employment? So I went back that same time period. We had 8,300 new hires in that time. That does include the hires that we had between January and March, but there was no substantial impact on the next data point that I'm going to show, is that 18% of those new hires left within 22 days. Meaning 18% of our team members left before even getting the foundations or the fundamentals, with the average length of service on those individuals at 11 days. We have black box data showing that the industry standard is turnover is 132.5%. Bagel Brands sits right around like 110 to 115, but the average time cost to turnover is roughly $4,000 to $5,000 per person. This includes cost of recruiting, uniforms, onboarding, training. Well, that's not a big obviously not a big impact on these, but it costs money for these new hires. Additionally, a bad hire can have negative impacts on both the team morale and the guest experience. So that really was a click to me, is like 1,500 of these new hires left without even being able presented with the basic fundamentals. So how does it engage OSAT? How does your guest feel about their experience with a bakeries that consistently execute new hire orientation versus those that don't? We have 512 corporate bakeries. I did a top 10%, bottom 10%. So top 50 to the bottom 50. Top 10%, they're OSAT rated at 84%. For those in the QSR world, that is phenomenal. It's industry leading. The key thing was the average time to complete was 14 days. That's the average time, with more than half the bakeries averaging 4 days or less. So they're consistently having their team member go through the content within the first 4 to 5 days of their employment. Let's compare it to the bottom 10%. The bottom 10% is almost 20 points lower. The average time to complete is 24 days, which is lower than the organization within average for the entire organization. And then half the bakeries are averaging more than 49 days. So we shifted that cascade approach even further. We're already connecting with our team member directly through in-store bakery experience. So we are texting the recruit. We are texting for scheduling changes. We are interacting. We have mobile access to our HRIS system. Time off requests all done through HRS through their mobile device. So why can't we engage with our team member directly to welcome them to the platform, to our organization, and let them know that they have a new hire orientation course available to them the minute that they're essentially an employee. So we're going to essentially let the new team member own their learning journey. On July 21st or 28th, 2021, last year, which was the start of our period 8 of 2021, I engaged all new hires the day after that day. Team members before that were not directly engaged, so hire date on or after 28th. And then we started tracking how engaged these new hires are with being directly connected with, communicated with, versus having the manager or the support center DODM GM push them to complete the new hire orientation. What this meant is it's an enrollment. It sends their whole HRIS onboarding process is getting them connected through Workday. We utilize Workday, but their emails connected within their profile, and we send a direct email to their personal email saying, "Hey, welcome to Bagel Brands. You have a new hire orientation course available to you. Here's your login. Here's how you reset your password. Here's your username." Provide them all the information where this was being relayed to them through their GM in the past. So the benefit behind this relieves a lot of the pressure off the GM of having to translate this material. Hey, Ted Lasso, your number is 306-729, whatever. So provide the ownership to the team member. We saw immediate results to the point that it was flabbergasted. As of we're sitting almost at the year, July 28th, I pulled this information yesterday, but this is all active and inactive team members. So team members that have left us. The reason why I do that is it shows consistency on execution. And this is team membership owned with a 14-day completion. So they will get a notification when they're enrolled, and they'll get a notification 3 days before, and a notification the day that's due. Since then, we have upped our completion rate to 82.8%, and the average time to complete is dropped down to 7.9 days. This is the average, mind you, there's 7,400 team members, but more than 48% are completing within 4 days. Phenomenal results for states that are required to be paid. We have a terms of service, terms of compliance on our site that requires them to do it within bakery. The initial engagement with this is that they get a notification letting them know, so they're coming into the bakery their first day prepared to do the materials. And if they've completed it, we compensate them for the time it took to complete the new hire, which we have the time to complete the new hire orientation within the module. That's all can be pulled within the report. So dramatic improvement on, we went from 22.5 days to 7.9 days. I then started thinking this in a different perspective, is how can I break this down? So this is a length of time. I started breaking it down by the periods. We report to the field leaders, to DOs, DMs, and everybody above support center based off periods. And I'll share some of the period successes as well here in a bit. But dramatic and other improvements, residual improvements within the program. New hires leaving within 22 days, it dropped to 12%, a 33% reduction. We had insane increase in engagement. I would challenge that these increased engagement is substantially higher than it is. I just haven't been able to pull the most modern comments because we actually get a lot more comments. But we had a 3 months before and 3 months after immediate successes. We had 25% increase in comments, as well as 25% or 50% improvement in comments, and then 25% increase in module completions. So they're going in there organically and completing the content by themselves, or wanting to. Kind of how I drove to the call out, the 88% of team members want to engage and learn on their own. And then I'm going to kind of bring this full circle, because chart in March, there was a phenomenal speaker that really started connecting me closer to how our team members consume material. Anna Leota had a really great presentation unlocking the generational code and kind of breaking down how we should communicate in dialogue. So I immediately came back and I discovered that 57% of our team members are Gen Zs, 29% are millennials. And that Gen Z is actually now 59%. I actually pulled the numbers. I wasn't able to put into a pie graph in time, but phenomenal. It kind of shifted my mentality. And then I also have kids. I have an 18-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I'm going to kind of show a personal photo. The kids are on my left. My son and my nephew were in Orlando, Florida. And they are sitting in the kitchen. We're like less than 500 yards from a beach. And they're sitting there next to each other, texting each other. And then my daughter is on the bottom. She's during COVID. She now does full QWERTY. We're the next generation, and the generation that are starting with us right now grew up, lived on an iPad, on a computer, can type QWERTY on a keyboard by the time they're 10. This is how they consume their materials. So providing the access that you can control the messaging and providing them direct line of communication really connects with how Gen Zs really connect with the world today. They're very entrepreneurial. They're very connected with organizations. They like knowing that there's a story behind it. So that brand history, providing the fundamentals and baseline of their kind of first job is really kind of really close the loop and gap on how we interact and engage with our new team members. So I alluded to it earlier, is that now I have this base, this total time length of 1.5 years between January 1st, 2020 and July 27th, 2021, and then July 27th or 28th, 2021 to today. Let's start breaking this down by period. So when I started breaking it down by period, this is really where it just blew my mind. 1 year ago, we were sitting at 27 days by period to complete new hire orientation for team members that were hired within that period. This green light notifies when I submitted or I advanced that enrollment. I started enrolling and started engaging with team members directly. It dramatically reduced the time. It went from an average 23 days. We're sitting right now at 4.5 days period to period, month over month over month of improvements. But what the red line is the average POS OSAT, overall satisfaction of our guests at the register. So the red line, as you see, the time to reduce the new hire orientation creates a better guest experience along the line. Additionally, the blue line that I have here is where I started connecting or communicating the improvements of the time to complete to how overall just the time to complete, but also we started seeing anecdotal information that the guest satisfaction or the OSAT was starting to kind of elevate. We started seeing turnover was being reduced, but it started engaging a different mindset within our field leaders. And the minute that I started sharing this information, both layers improved dramatically. We're sitting at 82.5% from an organization, OSAT, all of our brands. And then we're sitting at right around 4.3 days on the time to complete new hire orientation. And then additionally, turnover. Let's see how it impacts turnover. Same exact component. The green light endorses is where I enrolled all the new hires. And our turnover has gone from 196%. You can see kind of like fluctuations within seasonality, but for the most part, as you invest in them, provide them the content or provide them a method or easy way of accessing the materials, they're more connected with the brands and they're more willing or wanting to stick around with the organization. Additional impacts. So those, I just showed you a new hire orientation, some of the impacts for those, but what about those three other fundamentals to support our business strategy of cross-training all team members to a minimum of 3 positions? So greeter cashier, this is our soft skills, guest interaction, also how to ring up people, and et cetera, but more like guest interaction. We averaged 27 days at that time, that P11 2021. We've got that down to 5 days. Sandwich maker, the fundamentals of making a sandwich. Everything from our Texas brisket sandwich to our core fundamental egg, meat, and cheese. You would think that would be a very important module to go through to build consistent product. Average time to complete on P11 last year was 32 days, when it's now down to 5 days. And then prep person in the back house, preparing product, getting it ready for the next day, went from 29 days to 6 days. What that led to me is that learning journey provided them the path or the guidance to continue onto other areas of the organization that then support the bigger simplify and strengthen operations by cross-training all team members in a minimum of 3 positions. And it supports the company's strategy, but it's all being done organically. It's not having to be pushed down from the top down. The next one, my final slide, is yesterday we achieved a success within one of our regions, literally yesterday, because what this has done is now we've shared the impacts that it impacts with OSAT or guest experience. We've also shown the impacts of doing new hire orientation with the turnover, 2 fundamental important roles or components within any organization. And it started driving the top-down competition. Yesterday, we achieved the very first DO or region to achieve 100% completion in all new hires. Every team member that's within his region is trained through new hire orientation. That also includes the adverse health, food safety, any updates that have happened over the last 2 years. So team members that have been with him for 15, 20 years have gone through the new hire orientation. But the byproduct is that he's the #1 DO overall. He's got the second lowest turnover, 71% year to date. And he's got the #1 POS OSAT, 82% year to date. He drives it and pushes it that this is fundamental to the first several days of a team member's first 4 or 5 days. Really closes the gap that when you drive the fundamentals, the foundations, team members are gonna, it's gonna come through and on the tail end being beneficial. And that is all I've got. We got some time for Q&A.
Nick, thank you. Very enlightening. And we do have several questions. So I'm going to start with the ones that were popped in the Q&A section. First question is, so you have 2 people in the department handling all training for 1,000 restaurants. Do you want to expand on that at all?
That is correct. From the content side of it, we do have support team. We have ops support. So I'm under the operations umbrella. From the content creation and management of materials, so what we call job aids and PMIs and videos and e-learnings, it is all managed and supported by just the 2 of us. We get ops support, so overviewing or reviewing content to make sure it's accurate by the brand and by the location, distribution. We have support on that as well that also helps us with SOPs.
All right. And when you talk about completion rates, what is a reason they wouldn't complete? Is it retention?
There has been there in the restaurant world, and there is a mentality that when not everybody, but there's a mentality that we need to have new team members in position making sandwiches or ringing up guests immediately. There's also goes back to that generational code, is how you talk to them and how you connect with them. But we have a tendency, I came from the retail side of it. I was in retail sporting goods for 20 years. You have a tendency of just throwing them to the wolves is what I kind of quote unquote say. You'll learn the best by just getting out there and doing it. But with the new hires and how they have access to the tip of their fingers, would you rather them follow our process or go to YouTube on how to cut a bagel, or which doesn't use a cut glove, that doesn't use a fit? So there's fun. We're controlling it. It's changing that mentality from our GMs that it is important, that is critical to new guest satisfaction as well as turnover to provide them fundamentals. So there is lots of reasons. Mainly there's lots of barriers that stop them from going through there, but typically operators want to just get them on the line and be profitable, quote unquote profitable, as soon as possible, rather than actually investing in benefiting that side.
All right. The numbers on the slides include the franchised employees.
Yes, on the first one.
I believe we're asking about the data just in general.
Oh, all the data did not include any franchise team members from our franchise. So, and the reasoning behind that is our HRIS system automatically data feeds into our Wisetail or Coffee and EU platform. So it will activate and inactivate, promote, position change, region change automatically through a data feed through Workday, whereas our franchise partners all manage that at a bakery level.
A lot of interest in this question. What does your new hire orientation look like? Online, in-person, or combination?
The new hire orientation is primarily all online. It's typically, we see on average between 15 and 17 minutes to complete. A little longer for the Brugger's because the Brugger's has got a video series that goes into more like their cream cheese quality. It's called Behind the Taste, I believe, a video series we did several years ago. It takes between 15 and 20 minutes, I would say. It's a combination of video content, e-learnings, interactions. It will kind of provide you the fundamentals, just everything. Hey, welcome to Bagel Brands. This is how we got where we're at. This is welcome to the team. Hey, this is how you wash your hands. Hey, this is how you interact with a hot knife or a sharp knife and a hot surface. Just the basic kind of super rudimentary fundamentals. Our other RBT courses, so the other courses, greeter, cashier, sandwich maker, etc., are a combined in-person as well as digital. So we actually provide trainer guides for the managers that are on duty to how what areas to hit on day 1, day 2, day 3, and what materials to consume online as well as in person. And we facilitate that through the trainers guides.
And going back to the generational data, do you have any information specifically on 14 to 17-year-old involvement? And there is a secondary question. Are you able to text them the login information if they don't use email?
We do not, our team members, we do not hire younger than 18. So I do not have any data for 14 to 17. We do not have the option for texting. Typically for texting functionality, that would be where the GM would assist. But for the most part, majority of our team members, you have to have an email. And in order to get hired, unfortunately, that's how our recruiting, HR components, anything and everything goes through email. So in order to get time off, get benefits, etc., it goes through Workday, which is all done through email.
Okay. How frequently do you release communications via your LMS? Do you do it as needed or collect communications for a weekly scheduled release?
Our communications process is very formal. We do a weekly communication every week at Tuesday at 8 a.m. It is sharp. We have a process that we start collecting the information from all of our other departments late, I think it's Thursday afternoon at 1, and then refine the messaging so that we are kind of the gatekeeper. We do have a dedicated communications individual. Then we relay that to the bakery through our Tuesday morning communication. We also have off-cycle communications. We have, I think, 12 different distribution centers within our organization. So we have different things going on within DC that we do not have that funnel through the Coffee and Bagel U, but any larger programs, any larger initiatives, let's say there's a new sweets initiative or a new LTO product that's coming out, that's all done through our weekly comms, which is done through Coffee and Bagel U through our Whitestyle platform.
Do you know how many hours the content takes to consume for new hire orientation?
Just the new hire orientation program, as I said, is right around like 20 minutes. If you're trying to do new hire +3, it really depends on the user. It's all self-controlled or self-timed. So it kind of allows the GM or the leader that's in the bakery to follow through, walk through the trainer's guide. But typically, if you were to have a TGM or a high performing GM, you can have the 3 modules that are new hire +3 done in typically like 2 weeks. That being said, like being in a part-time position, you come in through and do each position. Ideally, we want to have it 2 weeks, so you're just not pencil whipping. But there's tests and quiz that connect with information retention and making sure that they actually know the materials. Additionally, we have 5 attempts on the quiz. This is something that has really been beneficial too. So we can capture the team member that just is rushing through it. We'll have team members that spend 22 seconds on the first quiz. And if they fail 5 times, their DM gets a notification that they've failed, and the DM has to add attempts on it. We've had a dramatic reduction in dramatic reduction in failures since we implemented that about 2 years ago. But yeah, it kind of mitigates and controls a lot of the just rushing through it just to get it done.
I believe this next question is referencing an employee doing training outside of work hours, perhaps. But the question is, does this work for California employees too? Do you pay them for this training? If so, how do you track that?
It's done by a bakery. There is a terms of services when you sign into the site, that the time you are to be on this is underpaid. You are going to get paid. And typically what happens, team member will engage with their GM, and the GM can submit or provide them the time that it took to complete the training. We have roughly, I think, if I were to, between 100 and right around 100 bakeries in California, and this has been no issue.
This next question, the general manager schedules the in-person training shifts, and are the team members required to finish the module before the in-person training shifts begin?
No, it's a balance. They could complete it before. Ideally, if the messaging, if you have a good GM, the GM will relay the process during their hiring process. Hey, we have this website called Coffee and Bagel U. You can do your training on there. We ideally, based off of the time that it completes, they will be doing it within their first 4 days, 5 days, of which will be their first day in the bakery. The way our data feed runs is every morning at 3 a.m. So Sally Sue, your first day is tomorrow. When Sally Sue walks in the door, they can do the training there at 3 a.m. or 7 a.m. whenever they're doing their training. And that's the preferred method. If they go through the process and they don't get new hire orientation done, Sally Sue will have that notification in her email box when she gets off at 2 p.m. and she can complete it outside of work, or she can just do it underneath the umbrella at the work, if that makes sense.
Okay, a couple of content questions for you. One is, so all orientation, food safety training, brand history, et cetera, all in a 20-minute module.
Yes, I would say 20 minutes if you're booking through it. There's no questionnaires or quizzes on the new hire. It's just providing the foundationals. High level, all of our videos are no longer than 3 minutes, I believe. We have about 5, 6 videos. If you're in Brugger's, like I mentioned, a little longer. And it's all user controlled. So if a team member wants to digest it, reread it, rewatch it, they can. But if you're an efficient team member, start to end, typically it's 20 minutes.
I love the focus on micro learning, Nick. Next question, how do you avoid recreating content that tends to outdate itself, keeping things evergreen, or do you do a lot of content remodeling?
Managing 4 different brands, as somebody mentioned it, and a lot of the brands actually have their own subset. We try to centralize or homogenize I think homogenize is the right word, but one collective, so a Bagel Brands focused material, and then try to be the same across all brands. We try, it was a heavy lift because when I started, every one of the brands, we essentially have 7 different concepts, and each concept has their own variation. So we tried to keep prep all identical. An example would be a black scoop. One brand was using a blue scoop, one brand was using a red scoop. We try to centralize, so there's a heavy lift at the very beginning of making this all functional. Now it's much easier to update materials where needed. We're doing a complete revamp of our catering right now. It's a heavy lift. Brugger's is our newest brand. We brought them in 2018, I believe. So there's a heavy lift at the very end or very beginning of the process, but supporting it post is much easier.
A couple more here. Team members complete learning on an in-restaurant tablet or a bring your own device?
We have a combination. We have a back of house computer and then also tablets.
Okay. You spoke a little bit about this, but do the stores have team leads or in-store trainers to take some pressure off of the GM with training, or is it solely the GM's responsibility to train new team members? Curious if the LMS takes away the need for an in-store trainer or team lead.
Say that one more time. I apologize.
Yes. Do the stores have team leads or in-store trainers to take some pressure off of the GM with training, or is it solely the GM's responsibility to train new team members? Curious if the LMS takes away the need for an in-store trainer or team lead.
So the GM overall is the person that's responsible to bring in this new hire to proficiency. We have shift leaders. Some bakeries we have, so shift leaders are essentially the bench for the next GM. Some locations have got GM or AGM or AMs, assistant managers. And then we also have in each region TGMs, training general managers, that will assist training higher positions, so shift leaders, general managers. But we have a support system within the layer, within all bakeries that help assist with the training guide that helps with in-person training. The LMS does not replace it. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you go through the process of our RBT courses, it's 60% on the computer, digital, through Coffee and Bagel U, through the e-learnings, through video content, and then 40% in person. And we provide trainers guides or facilitator guides to support that.
We've got a good follow-up question to that. Can you speak to how your GM and leadership are trained?
So as I alluded earlier, I showed the energized culture. One of the two ones that we have laid out that we're supporting is implement district manager and shift leader development programs. We actually have a really good general manager training program. It's next step above all those new hire +3. It starts going into business acumen. Workday implements how you hire, fire, fire is not a good word, but hire and bring on team members. There's some Workday, there's also HRIS system. There's a bunch of stuff within the GM. That is one of the courses that we're going to be looking at in the next year, is revitalizing and almost bringing in more business acumen, more soft skills that interact with managing team members, also managing certain age groups based off of how I just kind of explained this generational code. But also we are developing, right in the middle of developing, a robust shift leader program, that something that this organization has not seen ever, that will really bring the bench that's prepared to turn over and become GMs phenomenal. So we're in the middle of that as those create development materials. That's a several year project, and we're right in the middle of it.
Great. We are going to shift to talk about franchises for a moment. Did you see the same push down training issue with your franchise locations? If so, did you use this new model with your franchises?
We can't, there's no way, unfortunately, we can't provide this new model. The reason why is that we don't have a direct line. We don't have their readily available email. It's all controlled by the franchisee or the franchise GM ops leader inside the franchise. So we do not directly connect. If there are launches like an LTO, for the franchisees that have created a profile with email connections, typically the GM of the franchise location, we will send that same notification, but we won't report or track it.
Do you have any issues with team members who speak English as a second language?
We do. That's one of the challenges that we have been trying to challenge. Wistel has a native translator within their system that's functional for the layout of the site. Hard-coded items are not, unfortunately, translated. But additionally, with only a team of 2 as far as content, it's one of the things that is on our goals, but unfortunately not top priority.
And is all of your content created in-house, or do you use any off-the-shelf learning?
The majority of our stuff is all in-house. There are some off-the-shelf materials that we capture where we've tried to utilize certain different brands. Our harassment training is all done off the shelf. Some leadership content off the shelf, but for the most part, it's all in-house.
Well, Nick, we have gotten through all of the questions. Thank you all for such thoughtful questions. Nick, thank you for sticking around and answering all of those. A lot of good information. Tara, I believe we are all done. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Nick, for staying late. I know we went through a lot of questions there, but there was a lot of interest. This will be posted on our website later today. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Great. Thank you.